screenshot illustrates the pullback bar and the stop loss location, right? So we can see here we have some arrows here, an arrow pointing to the retrace back. This pullback here, right? So the EMAs are all stacked in a long direction, and so we have these red pullback bars here, right? The pullback bars, and we have a little plus symbol or your cursor basically highlighting the pullback bar, and so that is where the stop loss is to be placed, is at. So for a long trade direction, the stop loss is to be placed at the low of the last pullback bar. And so if it was a short trade, then the stop loss would be placed at basically at the high, right, of the last pullback bar. Right, so that's how we're placing our stop loss. BlackBird's up and loaded, running. So let's open up our order settings here. And the first thing we'll do is we will add in our Bloodhound Signals here. So we're going to go to Template Files and click on the ellipses button, the three little dots here button. All right, and so this opens up our familiar Bloodhound window here. So let's click on File, and I'm going to load yesterday's workshop file that has our signals in it. All right, and as a good habit, a good practice, always click on the Logic tab and take a quick peek at the entry signals and or exit signals, right? If your system also is using Bloodhound exit signals, you should take a look at those at the logic template here, at the logic board, so to speak, right? And just make sure everything looks like it's connected up correctly, right? Make sure it was left in the correct state for the entry signals, right? So for example, you might have left it doing some testing. Maybe you were looking at some, the logic way back here in the beginning here when you're doing some testing. So make sure that everything was left in the correct state. Right? So let me put that back. All right, then it's safe to click the OK button. Next, let's set up our entry signals. So there's only one logic template in yesterday's workshop file, so that we're good to go there. And of course, if you do have exit signals, you can enable that and select your exit signals, but this does not have exit signals. And that does it, right? It's that simple to add your Bloodhound signals into BlackBird. All right, so now we just need to set up our stop loss. So this doesn't say anything about the entry signal, so I will assume that we're just going to enter at market. So there's a market entry, and we don't have a replacement for our profit target, so I'll just leave that blank here. But you could probably just maybe make it a ATR based profit target or something like that as a substitute for a 2 times the risk profit target here. So I think that's what this means here, is the profit target would be 2 times the risk. But that is coming in a future update here. I think the next major update will incorporate 2 times, or a multiplier of the risk or a multiplier of the reward, right? So in other words, if you're going to set your profit target first, then you can make your stop loss an offset or a multiplier of your profit target, or vice versa. All right, so setting up the stop loss here, we're going to do a custom stop loss because we want to set that stop loss based on the bar that had just closed. So actually, before we do this, before we finish this up, let me click OK, and let's get our signals on the chart so we can kind of take a closer look at the bars on the chart here. So you'll notice Bloodhound is telling me that I need to reload my chart because we added Bloodhound into BlackBird. So I need to do a reload here so I can do an F5 on the chart, right? And Ninja's just going to warn us that we're restarting our strategy. All right, so now I have Bloodhound loaded on the chart down here. All right. Oh, also, because I loaded that chart template, I also have Bloodhound as an indicator, right, an independent indicator on the chart here as well. So let's see what I'm going to have to do here. Stretch this open so I can see the blue Bloodhound button, and I'm going to select the entry signals here. There we go. All right, so let me scroll back and try and find some entry signals. There we go. So we can see our entry signals. And so as soon as this up bar closes, right, we're going to place an order at market. So we'll probably get filled, somewhere around there. We'll get filled at market. But the point I wanted to make out here is that this bar has closed, so we don't want to place our stop at the low of the signal bar. We actually want to go back one extra bar here. There we go. So we want to go back 2 bars and get the low price of 2 bars back. So it's important to know how many bars back you're counting to grab that low price or high price, right? So now we can go back to setting up our stop loss here. And so on the options tab, we're going to go into the initial placement, open that up, and we can see it defaulted to price. All right. So obviously, we don't want to place our stop loss at the entry price, so we're going to change that to, so for a long trade, right, we're using the low of the bar. So we're going to scroll down here and select the low price. Now, a look back period of 1, that would be the low of the signal bar, but we want to go back 1 extra bar, 1 additional bar, right, to the down bar, right, to the last pullback bar. And so we need to increase our look back to 2, right, because we're actually looking back 2 bars here. And that's it. So all we had to do is just make sure that we got our look back period set correctly to the, how many bars back. Now, if you wanted to get fancy, and maybe there's situations here where, let's see if I can find an example. I guess when it comes to 15-minute bars, I'm not going to find any examples here. Well, okay, this is not what I was expecting here, but here's kind of a good example, though. I think this kind of helps illustrate. So let's say, we'll just have to say that, maybe this was going to generate a short signal, right? So these up bars were the pullback bars, for generating a short signal here. And if you look, right, so on the signal bar, right, it actually made a higher high than the pullback bar itself, right? So maybe you might want to maybe look back on the last 3 bars and use the highest wick of the last 3 bars, right? That way you're putting in a more conservative, more liberal stop loss, right? Maybe you want to analyze the last 3 bars and use the highest high, right? And so the opposite would be, maybe you want to look back on the last 3 bars and use the lowest low of the last 3 bars. So you're putting in a more liberal stop loss, right? And so if you're going to do, so if you're going to look back on either the last 2 bars or the last 3 bars, it will include the signal bar. So there's no way to skip the signal bar and only look at the pullback bars, right? So just keep that in mind. So so if you wanted to do that, because who knows, maybe the the signal bar itself might very easily could have generated a lower wick, and so maybe you might want to use the lowest wick, right, of the last 3 bars or the last 2 bars. So if you wanted to do something like that, to put in that liberal stop loss here. So let's get our stop loss settings back open here again. So if you wanted to do that, right, so if we wanted to use the lowest low of the last 2 bars, which again would include the signal bar and the last pullback bar, then the process look back buy, we would set that to the minimum value, right? So what's the minimum value? Well, that's going to be the lowest low of our look back period. So since our look back is set to 2, that would include the signal bar and the previous, right, or the last pullback bar. And if we wanted to look back 3 bars, well, obviously we just increase our look back period to 3, and there we go, right? So there's kind of 2 ways to approach this here, but that's not how it was written. So we'll just put it back to the single value. There we go. So a look back period of 2. Leave this at single value, and that will use the low of the last pullback bar where the arrow is, right? And that's it. We're done. That's all there was. That's all there was for the BlackBird portion of this question here. So again, the profit target is left at 2R, 2 times the risk, I think that is. So BlackBird doesn't have that yet, so we'll just have to skip that for now. So you could instead use a 2 ATR, so something like that. So, all right, and that's it. That's all there was for this question here. So I'm not going to save this out. This was a pretty simple setup, so we'll just skip that.